All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'll say welcome to this edition of the 1% Better Production podcast, where we talk with experts in making production processes better. So I've been lucky enough to meet many people with expertise in my 30 years supporting manufacturing companies. And our goal with these discussions is to learn from the experts and share their wisdom with those who are interested in making their manufacturing processes better. So the 1% Better Production podcast is powered by ftqf.com. We help teams gain insight into quality while saving time. So our guests today are Roberto Delgado Marcos and Erin Radke from mlean. And welcome, Roberto. Welcome, Erin. Thank you for joining us today. And
Thank you
I
for
would like,
inviting us.
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you. From different parts of the world. Roberto is in France, and Erin, you are
In Spain.
in Spain. Yep, from all over the world. So first, I'd like to ask, can each of you give a little bit of background on what you've done, what you are doing today, what your role is today? So Roberto, can I ask you to
Mhm.
start?
Sure. Thank you very much again for inviting me and giving me the possibility to talk about me and sharing with you some of the piece of learnings I've learned during the last years. I am a telecommunications engineer, but for many years I've been involved in on manufacturing processes, sometimes in the defense area, and other in the automotive, and other steps in other industries. But since 2014, I decided to launch my own company called mlean. This is a startup that I'm leading with my co-founders in Spain, and is a company specialized on digitizing lean manufacturing processes. And right now, I have to say that digitalization is more important than never in the past. And now I think the future is good for tools like this. So I think I'm in the right moment for establishing a company like this.
Great. Thank you, Roberto. Erin?
Yeah, my name's Erin. Thanks again for having us. Um, as you said, I'm in Spain, but I am an Iowa native. I won't deny it. Yes, and I've been with Emmeline for about a year and a half, and I work in the customer success department, helping clients with all the different products we offer, as well as the problem solving module. My background is nursing, which actually lends really well to problem solving and the diagnosis of different things happening with applications. So it's it's a great way for me to help clients.
That is interesting. I never thought about that correlation, but absolutely. Absolutely. It's there. Yeah. So our topic for today, which Erin just mentioned, is problem solving as a habit. And I've gotten to know Roberto and his team and Erin a little bit through various conversations. And that's why I came to you on this question of problem solving, because you approach it from the 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 aspect of make it a habit, build it into your routines. Not only do you approach it that way, but you've built a tool that helps people to do that. So obviously you've spent a lot of time thinking about problem solving and working on how to enable how to enable teams to be more effective in their problem solving. So I'm really eager to dig in and start talking a little bit about this. But first, let me ask on this topic of problem solving. If you think back to when you first started down this path and compare that to where you are today, what is one core concept that you've learned that you wish you knew regarding problem solving way back when you first started? Roberto, what are your thoughts?
Yes, it's a very good question. So for me, is clear. For me, the word is the Japanese word gemba. I I didn't hear about this word until 3, 4 years ago, and the meaning of that word. I'm pretty sure that the audience knows the word, but in any case, gemba is literally any direct location where action are taking place, locations where value are added or are improved. As an engineer during my whole career, I thought that the important things happen in meeting rooms or in offices or whatever. But at the end, I was wrong. Everything is happening in the shop floor, in the gemba, where the operator, where the processes, where machines are running. And I would love to have learned about this word before, because honestly, I think it's really important for me right now. And I think that any factory manager should spend more time in the gemba. I think it should be an obligation, even for the plant managers. And I know that right now, the gemba walk, let's say, routine is something that many companies are starting to put in place. And I think it's very, very interesting for everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, the go see it is
Yeah.
it that holds true. I agree. It's the same thing that I experience. I can tell you, Josh, also on this call, he lives it every day. That's how he goes out and solves problems. He walks the process. Go see it. Go
Yeah.
see it. Yeah, that's a great concept. Great observation. How about you, Erin? What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
this one?
I actually also have a visual aid to kind of touch on what the gemba is and what we're referring to. So if you can see here, this is an example of the gemba where everyone's working, right? And what we've seen in problem solving in a paper method or a more standardized method or paper method, basically, maybe someone calls, there's a problem, they call someone in an office and they start filling out an Excel from their office. Like Roberto said, getting into the gemba walk, by digitizing this process, we can get tablets, devices in someone's hands where they can walk to the gemba walk. They can talk with the people that are on the shop floor that are seeing the problem. They can go directly to where this problem is occurring. They can collect the data in real time. It isn't, okay, I'll jot it down later. Yes, you can collect the data in real time and have that traceability. For example, I write it down on a piece of paper and I lose a piece of paper, or I don't have time, it falls in a stack of papers and I lose it. By going to the gemba and doing it in real time and digitizing the process, it really doesn't let those problems fall through the cracks.
Yeah, that's how we got connected with your organization, is the way you've built that mobile tool. Is, to us, it's the only way. We work on the floor all the time, and then we see that separation of people going back to the office, and now they're disconnected. If they go back to their desk, they're disconnected. But if they're doing the work on the floor, capturing that, and Erin, I think you said gathering the data right on the floor. Yes, absolutely. That's we find that that's a much better way to do it. Much better flow. Your ability that you've created with your platform there to capture the video of either a process or a situation is, to me, it's one of the extensions of that. It's not just data, it's video that you're capturing of a particular process or a visual standard. So we find that to be very powerful also.
Thank you.
So The next question I'd like to ask is really tied to our topic here, problem solving as a habit. So if you think about problem solving, it's not something you just do on Monday at 12 p.m. It's something that you have to do all the time. So I'd like to ask, if you could you explain what are your recommendations for somebody who's not yet an expert, not yet mastered problem solving? How do you think of problem solving as a habit? Can you explain a little bit more about that, Roberto?
Sure. First of all, I would like to say that we call it problem solving, but at the end, for me, it's all about PDCA. It's all about continuous improvement. It's all about making the wheel run in order to improve our current situation and not stopping never. So the first thing we need to do is to understand that problem solving is not something that we need to do at Monday 12 whatever. No, we need to start step by step by running this PDCA cycle day by day, trying to identify small problems that can be solved very easily in with the help of some experts in the factory, but not big problems. Let's try to start on identifying small problems and make them to be solved in an easy way. And I'm not thinking about big problems related to the machine, the last machine we have bought, and is not reaching the expected results in terms of quality. I'm talking about small problems that are affecting the people, the environment, the quality, and so on. But once you have reached that point where you are the habit to identify problems and solve it, in order to perform a step forward, we need to think about how to deal with big problems, how to approach big problems. And in my case, again, PDCA, plan. We need to measure and define the problem. We need to quantify the problem, define the goals, and for sure, who will be the team and what will be the expected closing date. Because when we talk about plan, we need to think about when we need to have the problem solved. So we need to put some date in the planification phase. Then we need to perform the do, understand the current situation, reach the root causes, and implement corrective measures. Okay, that's very simple. Check and verify if results along the time. It's not a question of putting an action and then the result will be immediate. Maybe we will need to put in place many actions, but any action should be analyzed if it has performing the expected result in the process. And finally, act. We need to be self-criticism of the job done. We need to evaluate again and challenge the current standards, because at the end we need to update all the standards that we have created previously. Okay, and honestly, this is all about problem solving. It's about continuous improvement. We can call it A3, we can call it AD, DMIC, or whatever name, but at the end, it's a question of performing the PDCA cycle, trying to identify issues and trying to look for the solution.
Yeah, that's interesting that you brought up the PDCA. A properly designed and executed PDCA process is the habit, because it's renewing. It's renewing. I know we've all seen out in the wild, we've all seen the paper PDCA, the spreadsheet PDCA, and we've all suffered watching that being used because it's difficult. It is difficult. And Erin, before we get to you, I have one more question for Roberto. So you've built in your system, you built a process. You've built the notifications, the the easy methods of revisiting these, can you talk a little bit about how your platform allows and encourages that full circle and accountability?
For sure. So a digital tool must not um, avoid that accountability from the people. At the end, managers or whoever is involved on the problem solving or whatever process we want to digitize should be accountable enough to take care of their responsibilities. But in any case, we know that we are human and there are many urgent things in the factory. So at the end, the system is going to reinforce the communication between the people, sending, as you say, notification. What? Okay, remember this is the closing date of the problem, and we are quite far from here. Maybe you need to replan the problem, or maybe you need to scale the problem because you are a little bit blocked, and maybe you need to ask for coach. Or I mean, there are many helps in the solution that will help you to let's say digest the problem in group and improve the communication with the rest of the people in the factory. When we are using paper, Excel, or boards, at the end it's static information. Now with a digital tool we can reinforce that collaboration between people, not for let's say forcing them to do the things, but for uh, improving how they can face the processes, because the day to day in the factory is very crazy. And now with after the pandemic area is more crazy because the supply chains are more complex than ever, and you don't know when are you receiving your materials or your whatever. But and that's why I think a digital tool like the one we are developing is encouraging people to communicate more, and it's something that factories really need to think about.
Agreed. So Erin, I'm curious, from your experience with healthcare and your training, can you talk a little bit about the problem solving as a habit?
Yeah, I mean, problem solving as a habit. I mean, we can apply that to our daily lives as well. No, if you have children or whatnot, it also applies. Yes. So
Yeah.
so basically, in terms of coming from a healthcare background and dealing with, people come into a hospital, they have a problem, and your job essentially is to solve it, and so they can go home. So really, in the background of working through a diagnosis in the status of a healthcare setting, you have certain parameters that you need to look at. You have to, in the same way, you have to clearly describe the problem. You have to know what the problem is to start. Then, in the same way, you need to have the correct parties involved. When you create the problem, you need to include people that can help you solve the problem as well. I didn't have the digital format, I guess, in the hospital setting when I was there initially, and it would have really helped because you're limited when you have just a strict paper format. You can't add photos, you can't add documents related to what lab results came in. In the factory setting, with the digital tool, you can add those documents. You can add all the analysis that you've done, and it's all in one place. And there's no mystery of saying, okay, what did we do? Where are we at? It's all documented and communicated with the members of the team. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah, the correlation of the structure behind that problem solving. I think the medical industry has done a phenomenal job of making it a standard process, and that's why they're good at it. That's how you get good at it. And yeah, if there was a platform around that you could have used, it would. I agree. It would have helped tremendously.
Let me add one thing, because In the factory, I think at the end, what we want to put in place corrective actions, but also preventive actions to avoid the problem appears again and again. And maybe this is something we are missing in the healthcare system, because we just focus on correcting things, but not on, or maybe they told us what we need to do and we don't do it. But the preventive actions also are interesting. Very good. Very good example.
Yeah. So I think that's a good segue to the next question for both of you. And that is, can you talk about the importance of data in that problem-solving process? Roberto?
Problems don't exist without data. A problem must be measured. I mean, if you cannot measure, this is not a problem. So data is basic for the problem definition. And not any kind of data, for sure. We need accurate data that can help us to define the problem and subsequently solve it. I mentioned before, we need to plan, do check, act, whatever. I have to say that in my experience, the most important and the most difficult part of the problem solving methodology is the plan. When you are measuring the problem and when you are identifying and defining what is the problem. This is key, because if you do it correctly, you have the 50% of the problem solved, because you are aware completely about what is the situation. So data is basic, but good data, and take your time to get the right data to analyze the problem. And for sure, whenever you take the data and you have very well defined the problem, this will help you in the check part when you need to verify the results and compare with the previous situation and the new situation after the corrective action. So data is a must on the problem solving definition.
Yeah, and we find that's a process that's very difficult for most manufacturers to get good data. Either they have spotty data, inaccurate data, or no data. Those are the three situations we encounter most often. It's one thing if you have a machine that's sending you data from its process. That's one part. I mean, that's one aspect. But many processes have people involved, and that's where we see the biggest gap in data, is the people part of the process. And being able to capture that is tremendously helpful, as you said, in the planning. Yeah, Erin, anything you want to add?
I mean, I think one thing to add, obviously, what you both referred to, the data is essential. Without data, there's no problem. We don't know what's happening, right? As it's a process, taking it one step further. Again, I'm the lady with visual aids. Yes. Taking it one step further, you have collected the data. Now we've created action plans, right? We have these plans in place. We've collected the data. Now we have a plan. These are the different actions we put in place to solve them. We've designated a team. We've talked to them. We've been in the Gemba. We've figured out what the plan is. But we still need to measure again. We still need to measure again, as if it were the hospital. If I give you medication, I need to know if it's working, right? So here I have, this is my action. This is what we're going to do. In the digital format, we can determine, okay, let's evaluate if what we're doing is working or not. Because if it's not working, we need to come up as a team. We need to come up with a new action, a new idea on how to solve this problem. So again, taking that data, applying it to what we're going to do to solve it, but then measuring again to ensure that what we're doing is working.
Yeah, and that's a great visual aid, that the green red showing you
Right. Maybe you'll
the
see
status.
right. Maybe you'll see, for example, you know what? It's happening on the night shift and the evening shift. What's going on? Is there training lacking? Are we
Mhm.
not are we not respecting the standard? Do we not have enough people on shift? What's happening? It'll, as well as being clearly indicated, uh, it's to help you find where the problems areas are.
Yeah, the visuals are so helpful in
Right.
identifying patterns.
Yeah.
Patterns that may not be number patterns. They might be uh, qualitative patterns that without the visualization, you can't see them, or it's very difficult for somebody
Right.
to see the pattern. Yep. Yeah, great. So, what are your thoughts on if you were going to make a list of the indispensable tools and techniques for problem solving in manufacturing? What do you think some of those indispensable? If somebody said you can only give me three tools or techniques to use, what are the three that you would say you can't? You're not going to do very well without these three.
Okay, I will give you three tools, but for me, tools are not so important. For sure, we need the tools to solve the problem, but are
Hmm.
not key. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I want to reinforce my message. We need to measure and define the problem that will help us to solve the problem at 50%. Once we have that, how to hunt the root cause. Basically, we are using in our solution three main tools. The first one is the matrix is not. I don't know exactly if it's the right uh, translation, but at the end is a number of questions that will guide firstly to the people in charge of the problem or the team in charge of the problem to limitate the scope where to look at the problem. Okay. Then for sure we have the 4M or the Ishikawa diagram to really understand where the problem is related. Sometimes will be related to the methods, to the people, to the material, whatever. Maybe it will be a mix, but we need to use the Ishikawa to understand where we need to look at. And finally, for sure, the 5 whys is something that will help us to reach the root cause related to the material or whatever deviation we have found into the Ishikawa analysis in order to finally uh, hunt the root cause and start putting in place action plan. Okay, so mainly these are the three indispensable tools we use. But measure, define, put in place matrix is not Ishikawa and 5 whys. Measure the impact and effectiveness of the problem. And finally, we need to update and train people. Don't forget this, because if we don't update the standards, we don't update documentation, maybe we have done all the analysis perfectly, but at the end, if not the whole company is aware of, not the whole company, but at least the people involved around the process is not aware of the new way of working, the problem will appear again and again. And talking about these three indispensable tools, I have to say that it's difficult to master them, but in my opinion, I think that customers or industrial manufacturers, if they don't feel comfortable by performing this analysis by themselves, I think that they need to ask for help. There are a lot of number of people, consultancy firms like you, K Industrial, that has the expertise needed to reinforce these methodologies on the clients. So don't be afraid of asking for help to master these tools. I think it's something quite important for you to learn from experts, and I think As you know, TA, you are one of the best experts I know on this material, so they can ask you whatever help they need.
Yeah. Thank you, Roberto. Erin, anything you want to add? Do you have any visual aids for
Of
these?
course I do.
Oh,
Do you expect less?
wonderful.
Of course I do. Yes. So in terms of analyzing these problems, what are the three things as Roberto referred to, things like Ishikawa, 5 Whys, 4M tools, how does that play into a digital format? What compared to having it in a paper format where you're slightly restricted, you're looking on your computer for an Excel spreadsheet, you need to print it off, you need to go out to the Gemba or take a phone call and write everything down. By putting in the digital format, you are able to have these questions, these analytical tools at your fingertips in order to just get down to what's important, analyze and find the root cause of the problem. There's not, I need to find this paper. Where's that? Where did I put that? No, everything's right here. You can format the questions and get right down to what's important, solving the problem, to be quite honest. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what you've got up on the screen. This is your problem solving process that you follow, from description, providing the evidence, deciding what protection do you need to provide for the customer,
Right.
and all the way through to closing that problem.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, and that's great. Being able to do it on a tablet or on a phone. Everybody always has a phone in their pocket. And to me, that's anything you can do on your phone, if you've got that capability and you train your people to do it, the chances of it actually getting done just went up tremendously if you can do it on a phone. Yep. Or a tablet.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Erin.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can move on to the next question, when you see the teams working together and you see that they may not be very good at problem solving, what do you think are the most common reasons that teams fail at problem solving?
Well, first of all, in general, continuous improvement methodologies fail because a lack of commitment from the top management of the factory, of the corporation, or whatever. So the first reason why a problem-solving methodology is not working properly in the same way as other continuous improvement processes is because there is a lack of commitment from the top management. We need to see plant managers in the Gemba trying to analyze and solve the problem in the same way other managers are doing. We need to see this. So first of all, and in general for any kind of continuous improvement process, the lack of commitment in the top management is a real problem. But more precisely on the problem solving methodology, it fails because, again, we are working too far from the Gemba. We need to be in workstation and processes. We don't measure, we don't define well the problem. So at the end, people get desperate because they put in place actions that are not making any effect on the problem because they are hunting phantoms. The lack of experience on the root cause analysis, as I mentioned previously, please hire expert. Don't be afraid about being supported by expert on these methodologies. Is something healthy. And two additional fails I see in the factories is the accountability. People, we need to make people accountable, because even if we have done perfectly all the analysis of the problem, we have put in place the best actions to solve the problem. At the end, we need people make it real. And sometimes I see that it's frustrated to see people not taking care of the actions they need to put in place. The accountability is key. in my opinion. And finally, we are failing on the problem solving because maybe we are solving the problem, but we are not avoiding the problem to happen again or to happen in other areas of the factory, because we are not updating all the documents we need to update, the standards, the engineering documentation, and we are not well correctly training people. So at the end, they perform again the same mistakes they did in the past, and then we have the problem appear again and again. So again, 5 points why it's failing is far from the Gemba. We don't measure, we don't define well the problem, lack of expertise on root cause analysis, accountability of the people, and documentation not updated and people trained. For me, these are the 5 main reasons why teams are failing. I don't say it's easy, okay? But it's a routine. That's why I mentioned we need to start trying to solve the small problems that are not hard to solve. Because if we start with the hardest problems of the factory, we will be frustrated. We need to get the habit, and then the big stones will be solved.
And the title of this podcast and the discussion is 1% better. And we're in total agreement. If you try to solve the biggest problems, it takes too long. People get frustrated and they don't see any results. They kind of give up. But just pick one thing. Just pick one thing you can improve by a little bit, just for one day. Once you figure out how to do it for one day, guess what? You can do it for 2 days, and then 7 days, and then 30 days, and then a whole year. So it's just one little bit at a time. Yeah, and that's to tie this back to the beginning, that problem solving as a habit is, to me, that's what enables people to gain 1% every day.
Yeah.
That's why we do it. A little bit at a time, little bit at a time. Thank you, Roberto.
You're welcome.
Erin, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I can show you a visual aid that will assist you.
Yes, please. Perfect.
So just to tie in digitally, what we do, Roberto talked about the pitfalls of where do we fall short, where do problems fall through the cracks. In a digital format, in the section where we're at the stage where we've gone through the description, we've added the evidence, we've added customer protection, we've done the analysis, we've created the action plan and measured it through the effectiveness. When we get to the closing of the problem, it doesn't mean we're done, right? So we know that, and that's why digitally we can put together, questions that say, did you review this documentation? Have we updated the standard? We've made changes, but have we done that, or it's going to happen again? Additionally, there are times that we didn't select the people with the knowledge to solve the problem. Maybe it's time to escalate. Through digitizing this, you can notify someone directly, hey, I wasn't able to solve this. It's still there, and it's going to happen again if I don't notify someone else. Additionally, maybe there's training and coaching that's needed in order to solve the problem. Maybe there are training sessions, as Roberto mentioned, many of the problems are related to the standards. They don't exist, they're not followed, or they're misunderstood. So the training is an essential key as well in making sure that it's time to close the problem or revisit the issue.
So let's say we do identify that there's a gap in the training, and we want to add something to your coaching section.
Yep.
Does that tie in? If you add something to the coaching, how does that become visible in the future on other issues, or what happens to that when you make a note on that coaching section?
That's the great part about the digital format. Maybe if you were to, in a digital format, you just go talk to someone and say, okay, well, we need to do some training. No one really follows up with it, right? In the coaching section, we notify someone that something needs to be done. They get a notification. Actions can be generated based on what the coaching tools are, which coaching tools are identified. And it basically gets the ball rolling to set up those training sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So linking that communication without having to go find the person, what's their phone number, what's happening here, having it all linked in the system and the communication there really avoids that the problem gets missed or left behind.
And it makes that finer point that you've identified after doing all that work from the beginning of the problem to the end of the problem, it takes that finer point or the nuance of, hey, it turns out that there's more to this problem than just the raw material. There's more to this than just the machine. It's also the man or the coaching that we're missing. And
exactly.
That's what I love about your system, is that it connects all those things, and it answers the question, what's next? It doesn't do it for you, but it asks and answers that question. What's next? Oh, well, we need to do some coaching. So I'm going to assign that responsibility to Jane, because that's what she does.
Right.
And then Jane gets the notification. She can come back and see all the background if she wants it. And it's there for everybody in the future to see. That's great. That's wonderful. All right. So I have one last question to ask. And that is that if you were teaching, let's say there's a class. So there's the Continuous Improvement University. And you have a class of young people that this is their, let's say it's their introduction, and it's a semester-long class that you're teaching. What would be the 2 or 3 most important takeaways that you would want all of those students to have at the end of the semester? What would you want them to walk away with?
It's quite hard to simplify in just 2, but if we relate them to the problem solving, the first takeaway again is related to working in the Gemba. I don't remember exactly the person who mentioned this, but he said that 80% of production problems comes from the workstation, from in a production area, and it comes because, as Erin said before, there is no standard, or the standard exists but is misunderstood, or maybe the standard exists, is understood, but is not respected. So if we want to hunt the 80% of the problems we will suffer on a factory, we need to be close to the Gemba, because we will hunt 80% of them. So that's the first takeaway I want to say to my students. Forget offices, forget meeting rooms, go there and see. And maybe the second takeaway is a big sentence that Peter Drucker said a long time ago, saying that if you can measure it, you can improve it. Again, data is key. But I don't know how to say in English, but right now with the big data, we are crazy, because we are trying to digitize as many data as possible in the factories. We need accurate data, only the needed data to analyze problem. But if we don't have them, if we cannot measure, we cannot improve it or even solve it. So again, we must to learn again from Peter Drucker about this.
Yep, and that is the reason that we wrote our app, FTQ app, is that we get asked all the time, hey, can you solve this problem for me? and then we go out and we look at the problem that we were asked to solve, and it's what's really happening on the floor is not what they think is happening. So the FTQ app enables that. It simplifies that process of collecting that data so that you can act on the right thing.
Again, thanks to your app, you are helping your clients to solve the problems at a health. You are doubling the speed of solving problems because accurate data is key. Whenever you have that, you see where you need to touch.
Yep. All right. So, Erin, if you were teaching that class, what are your thoughts?
Well, to not say the same thing. I agree with Roberto fully, but to not say the same thing, yes. I think additionally, I would maybe add that it's a continuous process. A lot of times we think, okay, problem solved, put it to bed, we're done. No, it's a continuous process that we want to get better. We're committed to getting better, to solve problems and improving our processes in that way. Additionally, I would say that it's important to identify the right team members to help you solve the problem.
That's good.
To get the right players involved. Because if you put together a team, but maybe they don't really understand the problem, maybe they don't have the tools they don't understand the analysis that needs to be done to get to that root cause. If we don't have the right team, we might not get there. But also that they are willing to say, we're not quite sure, and looking for help in that escalation and coaching. Yeah, to continuously get better. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So to make problem solving a habit. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's good stuff. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. And that's my last question for you. So great conversation. Thank you very much. If there's anybody that's out there that wants to ask a question, now would be a good time. If you could just raise your hand on the Gmeet app if you'd like to ask any questions. And while people are thinking about that, I'll say thank you again, Roberto and Erin. I love having these conversations. We're on our third discussion, and there's always something that is a great takeaway from these discussions. So we are recording this. We're going to share this with everybody who is interested in making their production 1% better.